Want to introduce the guest, Brent Peterson. You're a unique kind of unicorn in the sense you started, bought, sold.
If you want to sell your business, the owner can't be an important component in staying at the business because that's just a recipe for disaster.
I think ideas are easy. It's the execution that somebody's got to do it.
People think that ChatGPT can do everything for them. Every piece of content that goes out for human consumption should be read by a human before it gets to the point in which another human can consume it. That garbage that people are just spitting out and not reading are hurting them more than it's helping them. If you train your LLM to do what you want it to do, it's going to start learning from you.
It's just going out and, like you said, analyzing the content based on my persona. Do you even think websites are going to be around in 5 years or 3 years? This is the unfiltered truth about entrepreneurship. Raw, no BS, no sugarcoating. Welcome to Entrepreneur Intel. I'm your host, Wes Matthews. Each episode, we'll learn from experienced founders and uncover the top 5% learnings that led to their success in all things personal, family, and business. This show is sponsored by Stealth Consulting, delivering clear marketing strategies, ROI, and no surprises. So I'm excited for today's guest. Want to introduce the guest, Brent Peterson. Fun fact about Brent, what I just learned is you've completed a lot of marathons, but 6 major marathons.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And a couple of things I want to dive in with you. It's multiple companies as an entrepreneur and exiting a company, buying a business, starting another one. I just kind of want to dive in and start to unpack that. A lot of our listeners are either successful entrepreneurs or aspiring to be entrepreneurs. And I think you're a unique kind of unicorn in the sense you've started, bought, sold, and all that stuff. So really excited to dive in. So whereabouts are you? Where's home for you?
Home is in Kona, Hawaii. Right now I'm in Minneapolis. So summers in Minnesota are fantastic, and the year round is summer in Hawaii. So we have kids here in Minneapolis, so come back for a couple of months in the summertime to see grandkids and kids.
You lived in Hawaii for a long time, or just have you sold your company, moved to Hawaii, or how'd you end up there?
Yeah, we've been there full time for a year now.
Okay.
And then we've had a place there for about 6 years.
So you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, 35 years, which is a good clip. What was you exited? I'm assuming that's your first company. It's called what Gento?
Yeah, no, I mean, my first company was a business that we built computers back in the 90s. In the late 90s, Best Buy started selling computers for $400, and I could see the writing on the wall that it just wasn't going to work. So, yeah, no, I've been around the block a few times.
So why back then did you go into, to be an entrepreneur? Like, why didn't you go off and be a doctor, lawyer, or go work off at some enterprise company? What was the differentiator about you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there's a differentiator. I think there was something in me that wanted to do something, even in college. Well, I should say I went to college for 8 years. I was at the University of Minnesota. I went there for 8 years. During college, I started a company called BP Enterprises. I just sold electronic stuff. I went to some of the local outlet stores, bought used thing or refurbished or stuff, like amps and receivers, and sold it in the classified section. So it's kind of like my foray into it. And then in college, I had an opportunity to work at a computer store, and the computer company was offering franchises. So I said, hey, I'm going to work for a year and then I'd like to buy in. So that's what I did. And I was still in college when that happened. And I decided that after, 6 months of being a full-time student and a full-time business owner, it was just too much. So I quit the school.
Okay.
That was in 1992.
Yeah, I was going to say 92, right? So, okay. I'm trying to think back then. I remember buying my first computer on my own. I think I was 18, so that was 98, 97, 98, something like that. And the computer was like this big, and it was like a lot of money, like $3-4 grand or something like that. It was a gateway. It was obnoxious. You mentioned, though, in your computer experience, something changed. Pricing changed. You said Best Buy started.
Pricing.
What happened as an entrepreneur? Like, how did you go through that period, right?
Yeah, I think there was just a myriad of computer assembly, and it was computer assembly, but there's so many people in that space at the time. And, going through the 90s, we got to be very successful. We were working on very low margins, but selling a lot of computers. And I could see that we're going to get priced out. Dell and those other bigger companies are starting to, do mass manufacturing of computers, and it just made no sense to hand assemble computers anymore. Even if you could get we would get parts directly from China. So it made no sense to do it, and you could see the writing on the wall. So I sold the business to some employees, and they kind of took it over at the time. This is like in the late 90s.
So if that's your first business sale, any regrets there? Like if you saw the writing on the wall, was the outcome what you expected, or do you have any regrets?
Oh, I don't have, and it wasn't my first. I mean, I think I had a store. I had a store too that I sold, and I paid out cash for it, or they paid me cash for it. So it was one of the franchises. I sold it, and somebody else could run it. So I that was good. It worked well for me. The store was more of a lateral move where, I was able to unload a bunch of burden and time and get to start into something new. And that's when I got into development work.
So what was it? Was that the next company, the Wagento, that you started then, or was it something else?
No, Wagento started in 2010, and that's when Magento came out in 2008, and I got introduced to Magento in 2009, and I came up with the name pretty simple, just start changing the first letters, and Wagento sounded better than Pugento, so that's how I came up with it. I just got really involved in the community, and it's an open source product, and one of the leadership at Magento at the time encouraged me to start an agency, and that's what I did.
So that's 2010, and so were you guys were an exclusive developer on Magento. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, there's lots of different types of software and coding language.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are specifically for Magento. When you're starting a company, like trying to be everything to everybody because you need money coming in the door, did you stay true to we're just going to do Magento?
Yeah, definitely. That was probably a good move, is just niching down completely on Magento. We didn't do any other work outside of that. And there was, at the time, there was just so much work that we didn't have to go out and try other platforms. We did that. We did it later in the 2010s. We branched out to other platforms just for the need of doing so, having some discipline and having different disciplines to offer clients made a lot of sense. So yeah, I would say the best move we made was A, pick the name Wagento, and then B, just stick to what you're doing and do it well. Not try to do, hosting and all the other fun things that come along with it. We partnered with really great companies at the time to do the other bits of the job that we had to do, and that way we weren't on the hook. If you're hosting somebody's website and the website goes down, you could be making some income, but that little bit of income then is a really a problem if your one little piece that you decided you wanted to add on stops working. That could interrupt the other 90% of the business you're doing with your client.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I actually, that happened to me, right? So like I had a web design development company for many, many years, and part of that solution was we had our own proprietary platform and we hosted all the websites. So people always ask, like, is there anything that keeps you up at night? And what actually did was our servers, getting hacked and going down. And, we had some clients that were down for 3 to 4 days. Imagine, a paying client, an actual business that their website's down for 3 to 4 days and there's nothing we can do about it. The juice was not worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
I vowed never to host email or a website ever again in my entire life. So that's good. I mean, stay disciplined as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, it's kind of nice that you did incorporate the name, because it kind of forced you to stay true to it. So what happened throughout that period, right? Is Magento still a viable platform, or how have things evolved, since 2010 till today?
Yeah, Magento is still a viable platform. It was purchased by Adobe in 2018, and they really haven't done much with the community or the software itself other than rebranded as Adobe Commerce. And now they have a SaaS product called Adobe SaaS Commerce. But having said that, there's still a really strong community around Magento. So I'm still, involved in the community. I still volunteer, do things like that around that community. I would say that, one thing we had to do in the late 2010s was we added on BigCommerce as a partner, and Magento was definitely a problem with our name at the time. So we spun out a new little brand just for BigCommerce work.
So what year did you sell that company, Magento?
2021.
So COVID had started. What led you to selling that company?
Well, I'm in Entrepreneurs Organization, and my forum for a number of times have had experts come in. And Entrepreneurs Organization is a peer-to-peer network for entrepreneurs. And so my forum, we meet every month. So my forum had some experts come in, and they did some valuations of everybody's business. They do it for free. And so I got interested. I think the value, there was one company that gave us a pretty low valuation. So we said, no, this doesn't make any sense. And then COVID happened, and everybody wanted an e-commerce site. And, it was just crazy to be in the e-commerce industry during COVID. COVID had to be the best place to be. And we got revalued, and it really made a lot more sense. So we put it up. We put it up for sale in right around COVID. And we had instant offers, and it was just the right time.
So like the market seemed right for you to do it. Like you as an entrepreneur, what was it for you that kind of made it like, okay? Was it the money? Was it the timing that, you've had a 11-year run in Magento on this company and like ready to hand it off to a new owner? Mm-hmm. Or what was sort of the catalyst for you personally that led you to that?
Yeah, I have a business partner who's my wife, and she did all the HR and all the bookkeeping. And, we were at 63 or 64 employees at the end there. And it just was so much to manage and doing all that work. She wasn't interested in taking on that stress anymore, and dealing with accounts receivable and trying to get people to pay. She just wasn't interested. So, that getting out was first her idea, and I was on board with it. But it turned out to be the best decision we could have ever made. We would have never, since 2020. I'm sure that all these companies have gone down in value just simply for the fact that there isn't as much demand out there for what we're doing. And now it's even changed more with vibe coding. And I feel like you can probably produce websites even cheaper than we did. You certainly can make them a lot less expensive than we did in the past.
Yeah, so I sold in 2021 as well. And we sold the majority of the company. My partner and I held on to 20%. But like my crystal ball that normally doesn't work kind of worked in this instant, because for me it was like, hey, this AI is sort of like heard about it, and like websites and digital marketing at that time for me was, man, like everybody has a great looking website. It's such a commodity. It's getting really inexpensive to, spin up a website. I used to tell people back in the day, like in 06, 09, that, you don't want your sister's cousin's brother's friend managing your marketing. But the reality is today, I think that person can do a really good job with all the little SaaS products out there and how you can kind of wrap those all together. So looks like your crystal ball worked out for you again, because if you rewind back to your first company in computers, you got out of the way. You have no regrets. But like you mentioned, like talking about like the right way to exit. I mean, do you have any like direct feedback or things that you can reflect on today that was the differentiator, or, hey, that was really smart what we did here? Is there anything that, because you get a lot of entrepreneurs that some of them are just ready, they put in a decade, they're burnt out, 65 people, that's a lot of people, sometimes, do you have any, what are some like the top 3 things that you recall that, really stand out to you now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it was an emotional roller coaster. You lose control of what you want to do, and the new person has a new vision. I wasn't ready to be on board with that. I was ready to continue my vision, and that was a huge struggle. I struggled with that for months in the very beginning. But then I really just resigned to the fact that, hey, it's no longer my vision and somebody else's vision. So I think the first thing is just being ready for that. But before that, I think one thing I've learned, and especially with this new acquisition that I did with Content Cucumber, is you want to make sure that you have a cultural fit with the company that you're selling, especially if you're going to stay. And I sort of had a 2-year contract that I stayed, and we didn't do all those cultural things. We lost a ton of staff up front just because everything kind of changed. I mentioned earlier, my wife was my business partner, and she's very nurturing. She was very nurturing to all the employees, and that was missed in the whole changeover. And then I didn't have an end date. And most of my entrepreneur friends who have sold have had an exit, and they have an exit date. And typically the new owner asks them to leave even earlier. And I kind of wish now that I would have asked for more of a salary to get them to get rid of me sooner than later. I think it would have been better for my own mental well-being to be able to leave. And I would have been fine even being forced to leave it. In fact, I quit after 2 years, and it was just I couldn't see eye to eye anymore with the way the new way of thinking and doing wasn't my way, and I didn't find the energy to continue on.
It's a really important share, and like our stories are very similar in the sense of that whole experience. I had that realization myself too, that you made the decision to sell, yet you kind of have to give up that control with whatever control you had, but then you sold it. And that's what I was going to ask, like reflecting on that specific piece, like you tagged along, right? You sold the company. Then either you were there from like a fiduciary, you had to be there, it was part of the deal. Like, would you change that aspect? I mean, obviously to me, everything's a learning experience, but what would you do differently? Would you have just sold it and been done that day? Or are you glad you went through that 2-year experience to really understand what you want and what you don't want?
Yeah, I think sold it and be out in say 60 days. My wife was done within 30 days. They decided they didn't need her, and I think that I think I was a good part of the business, and I was the face for the business, and I didn't necessarily have to stay there. And it ended up that I wasn't an important component, which also is the goal. If you want to sell your business, the owner can't be an important component in staying at the business, because that's just a recipe for disaster. Maybe I had a more inflated sense of what myself was worth in terms of being there, and now looking back, I could have left after 60 days. And I think that just having some of that contractual things in place where you are measuring, you have some measurements in place that say, after this time, if both of us aren't meeting some expectation, and if you're running EOS, you understand that you get a scorecard. If one of us isn't meeting a scorecard expectation, and then make those objective, you make that scorecard very objective so you can measure it. Let's part ways, and let's do it in a happy sense, and not be, let's not do it in a emotional sense. And I think the other thing that happens in all these occasions is your emotions start getting in the way of what a business decision should be.
It's really interesting. There is an exercise, I think, in EOS that, the entrepreneur operating system, and it's like a culture fit tool. And if I rewind back, I wish I would have, because I think the challenge is like when you're getting courted for sale, it's super exciting as a business owner, right? You're talking 65 employees. I can do some back of the napkin math. Like we're talking a lot of money, right? So it's kind of nice to have these conversations. I think everybody show up, and whether you're selling, you're the buyer, it's nice to like get a letter of intent, a LOI, or like somebody's offering to buy your business. That's one thing I think for me too, that I kind of sold myself in the idea that we were a culture fit. And then, for me, I tagged along for 2 years, very similar story to you. Like it just, we didn't have clearly defined roles. It was like, well, we'll just do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we can kind of just do this together and get it. And that wasn't the reality once everything was said and done, right? I mean, the last thing any buyer wants is another visionary, giving their input, and then there's like this, hey, we bought you, or whatever that. It's worlds collide, so I find it interesting that, so like you go through that transition. So what is it for you? Is it what's the thrill of the entrepreneur? Like if you sold, it's like, okay, I'm done. But if you're anything like me, like that lasted about a week. Like I gotta create, I gotta build stuff, break stuff. Like what's it for you as an entrepreneur? Like what keeps you, like you bought another business, start another one. What keeps you going? Yeah,
I think it's that creative side. I started my podcast during that transition from exiting, just to have sort of somewhere where I could be creative and I could have an outlet to do those things. And now, having another challenge to try to make a business profitable again is exciting. I think, I bought a business that has human beings that write content. And that's really, human beings are under fire right now for writing content. And people don't believe that humans need to be involved in content creation anymore. So it's a real challenge, and I'm up for it. So I think that's part of it. The other thing I do is, I like to create things. I'm still a sort of a programmer at heart, and I'm creating an app right now that does some branding and some brand voicing, and using help of AI to help analyze some bulk data to help clients better understand what their voice is. I think that kind of thing is very exciting, and AI has been a real eye opener, and it's been a way for me to do things on my own without having to hire a developer.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Like thinking back to your company with 65 employees, like, do you think about that again, like repeating that process, or is it with AI and like just how the market's changed? What are your thoughts on that as you build these companies? I mean, how are you approaching employment, hiring humans versus leveraging technology?
I am aware that we need to leverage this. I do believe that every piece of content that goes out for human consumption should be read by a human before it gets to the point in which another human can consume it, which requires humans to actually read it. And I think what's happening right now is content's just getting churned out there. People are just copying and pasting directly from ChatGPT. And we're going to end up with a whole bunch of vanilla content. So the people that are actually have an expert that are reviewing the content that's going out and editing and rewriting and making it less GPT-ish. There's definitely buzzwords out there that GPT does, and we can recognize now. And the savvy people are going to recognize this content is generic. And I believe that those people then are going to affect you by not shopping or not reviewing or not reading or whatever that thing is that you use to create that content. They're not going to read it. They're going to skip right past it because they know it's just garbage created for the sake of garbage.
Yeah, the ChatGPT content is just so bad. I get content now from people, and it's got like the emojis, on every title, and it's like certain things are bolded, and I'm like, can you just take the emojis out and at least like not bold the lettering? It's so bad.
Yeah, and it's also, if you did want to use emojis in your posts, you don't want to use emojis anymore because everybody knows that it comes out of a LLM.
But so I just watched like Theo Vaughn had was a Sam Altman on, right? OpenAI, and they were talking about the new version of ChatGPT that's coming out. Do you think at some point though that might change in the sense of like, right now it's kind of crappy, but will there be a day where it's like, can't tell the difference?
It'll get closer, but with anything, if left on its own not to change, what changes is your feedback. And so if you train your LLM to do what you want it to do, it's going to start learning from you. If you're constantly just going out there and creating content without ever giving it feedback or changing then it's never going to learn what you're doing. It's never going to decide, or it's going to decide whatever the least resistance is in creating that content, and it's going to do whatever it thinks it could do. And if you don't give it feedback, it's going to continue on. So again, without some kind of intervention, we're always going down the path of mundaneness.
So I love that you're in content, because from a business perspective, if you're B2B, like, how do you differentiate yourself from the pack? Like, I think it's, is blogging important to you, social media posts? But I think as we progress further into the time and the world of AI, like authenticity, trust, like being a thought leader is so important. So like, what do you recommend for an entrepreneur or a company that is faced with the headwinds of AI? Like, is it, hey, write a blog a month, do some social media posts? Like, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, like, they don't know where to start. So they get analysis paralysis, or you don't want to put yourself out there. Like, you have an owner, like, I've never had to do that. I don't want to do that. But like, do you have a simple recipe card that you would recommend for a business to think about?
Yeah, I guess whatever your product or service is, make sure that whatever that landing page is, whatever you're trying to get people to look at, is supported by material that gets people to look at it. If you look at your search results right now on Google, a lot of that is just FAQs, and a lot of it is questions that other people have asked that it can answer. So your content's going to get raised to the top by answering questions that people have where they're searching for your product or service. So having content on your site is super important, and then having extra content other than your product or service page helps to support that content. So interlinking within your site, all that is still completely important. That's not to say that you shouldn't be aware of AIEO, the AI optimization that's happening right now. You should be doing both. There are going to be agents that go out there and buy stuff, and there's going to be more and more of agentic shopping, agentic commerce, where it's just going to go to an API endpoint. It doesn't even, may never even look at your website. But at the end of the day, the majority of the people that are buying are going to look at the content on your site and decide whether they want it or not based on that content.
I'm really interested to see like what the next 5 years bring. Like, you and I both coming from digital, I mean, I feel like the heyday was like 2009 to like 2018 of just like straight up search engine ranking. I mean, that was it, right? I mean, everybody just wanted to be found on the search engine. I mean, I think at some point, I think Google was really smart in terms of how they activated local search ads, local service ads, right? Guaranteed leads, because people are tired of getting ripped off and just paying per click. But do you see a world of like, I do all of my searching now on ChatGPT. I don't use Google any longer. And like, I come from that world. Do you feel like with your experience in web and software that, I envision a world of, the agents like really understanding you, like knowing my shoe size, know my hopes, dreams, fears, and it's just going out and, like you said, purchasing stuff, analyzing the content based on my persona. Do you even think websites are going to be around in 5 years or 3 years? Or like, what's your crystal ball? Your crystal ball has been pretty good to you. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, that's been said that big companies aren't going to need a website, but I'm still very skeptical that somebody's going to want to do some research. And I just feel as though if you put yourself in a little pigeonhole and allow your agent to do all the research for you, you're really then filtering everything through one lens. So let's just say all your search goes through your ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is returning you those results. You're not really open to seeing, is it right? Like, is it correct? How can you verify that it's correct? And where, if there's no website, how do you double check that, right? How do you know? Do you just go to Claude and check it, and you go to Gemini and check it? Like, I guess I can see at the end where we wouldn't have a website. You're going to still have to have something that is a back end. So maybe it's just a headless e-commerce platform. And if you have a headless e-commerce platform, why not make a website? Like the difference between having to serve up content through an API and then having just basic text to somebody to read. It could be, you're right, it could be that eventually we don't have websites and everything goes through portals. And in 30 years, when you and I are both 50, we're going to see it differently, and maybe the older generation is still going to want to use a website to do some of their research.
I'll probably say that's what Grandpa used to use, right? Website.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, how do you, as a merchant, how do you promote your product if you don't have somewhere for the promotion to go to? Like, I guess then you're just really determined on timing of whatever ChatGPT is giving you. You get rid of any sort of creativeness in what you're doing as a brand. It doesn't matter what your brand looks like or your new thing is. You're going to have to figure out a way to market that new thing through ChatGPT, right? I don't know.
I'm big on that right now. I'm hot on that. I think it's the gold rush right now, just like back in 06 to 09 in terms of getting ranked for search engines. I think right now is that opportunity for like really capitalizing on ChatGPT. But I almost, my son, we were driving in Michigan. We're both from the Midwest, and stopped off at a rest stop, and there was a payphone there. And I showed him the payphone. Like, he was like really puzzled, like had no idea, like couldn't even like process what that was. Like with this Sam Altman, like what they were talking about is like how just the leaps of how fast this is going. And you incorporate ChatGPT now plugged into your brain. Like, what does that do for a website? But my point, the one point I want to make about where do people go, I've been noticing this thing pop up on my credit card statement, TikTok shop. So now, like, my kids and now my wife, like, I don't even know anything about it. I should probably know all about it because I'm paying a lot for it. But like, everything's being directed through this TikTok shop to purchase. So is that what happens? Is it just these massive platforms where, because the e-commerce, it was kind of like Amazon, right? Like, you have to go on Amazon to get market share. I'm sure there's the outliers that kind of do it themselves, but these three large platforms is the only way you're going to be able to do commerce in the future.
Yeah, I guess I would ask, if you're going to choose channels, and if you're going to be on Amazon, is Amazon going to go away? Is ChatGPT going to take over Amazon, or is it going to be a AWS version of ChatGPT, which there's already some learning versions of that. And then if you're already on all these channels, and again, you have to serve up your content from somewhere via API, would it make sense to put up a website? I'm just saying the obvious, right? You're going to have to serve up your content to TikTok and to Instagram and to ChatGPT and Claude. So would it make sense to have another channel that's your channel that you own, right? Because you don't own anything else.
Right.
If you don't own your own content, you don't own any content you put on TikTok. And if TikTok goes away tomorrow, which it's been going away tomorrow for the last, 6 to 8 months, does it make sense to continue to invest in that? At some point, you should own what you do, right? And, email lists and your website are your really two places where you own that content.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking about, like, does it, websites now are kind of like lead generation tools. From my perspective, I think marketing at the end of the day, it's people are investing because they want client acquisition. Just thinking about how those evolve, from more of a content deployment system than call to action, phone number, all that stuff. Like, my 16-year-old doesn't want to have any interaction with any human. He doesn't want to get on the phone. Like, the difference of kids growing up versus where I'm from, it's so interesting on the differences. So with content, my assumption, I want you to explain a little bit about the challenges your company solves. So you got content basis, and then you have content cucumber. I'm a visionary entrepreneur. If you, Brent, tasked me to sit in front of my computer and write one blog article today, and as soon as I'm done, I can go home early, I would be here all night.
Yeah, think of Content Cucumber as the creative arm of a marketing growth engine. So Content Cucumber has humans that write content. They're now doing some video as well as audio content and images. And they're delivering it to Content Basis, which we're a HubSpot partner. So we're working with marketing people that help to get that content out there and to deliver the content to the end user, wherever it's going to be. Apparently, it's not going to be on a website, and it's not going to be an email eventually. But that's how the kind of two fit together. The Content Basis has some products. So we have a Shopify app that works inside of your Shopify store that helps you with content in blogging. And then we have a new branding app that helps you understand your brand voice. So Content Basis is going to be more that arm that does some product development and product delivery along with content delivery. The Content Base or Content Cucumber does content creation.
What industries doesn't it work for, right? You get a visionary. I've talked to a lot of lawyers and they're like, it's got to be me. Nobody else can do it like me. Or you get entrepreneurs like, who is it for? Any type of entrepreneurial company, or like, is it exclude any type of industries? Or
talk about lawyers. Like before ChatGPT, lawyers were a huge part of their business, and any of those people that need a lot of content on their website were a very large part of their business. And I do believe it's going to be a shift. I do believe that people think that ChatGPT can do everything for them, which it can. At some point, though, you as an entrepreneur run out of bandwidth to do all this stuff. And even if you're getting great ideas from ChatGPT, if you have to execute those great ideas, you as a person may not be interested in even putting in the prompt and then coming up with 20 social posts and then hopefully reading them if you are, exporting them as a CSV, uploading them to your system, your delivery system for social media, and then hoping that social post that ChatGPT wrote that you didn't read actually sounds reasonable. Because I believe that garbage that people are just spitting out and not reading are hurting them more than it's helping them. And I know from my own experience, I put on a weekly article, but I also do a post every day on LinkedIn, and I get called out when people can tell when I use ChatGPT. I use it to summarize data, and I'll use it to take a whole entire post along with everybody's comments and break it down into a summary. Well, then it sounds very machine-like. And that's what it's good for, but really you need some massaging and items in there to make it sound like yourself.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I think there's no shortage of ideas. I think ideas are easy. It's the execution that somebody's got to do it. The machine's only going to go so far. I'm really perplexed on these agents that are ready to roll out. It's kind of crazy to think about, but I think doubling down, I'm a big believer in content. I've always been a big believer in content. When's the best time to do content? 20 years ago, like planting a tree, but you can still start today.
Mm-hmm.
And, so Brent, I really appreciate the experience shares. If, how can people get in contact with you if they have any questions or kind of want to take an analysis of what they're doing?
Sure. Brent at contentbasis.com is the easiest way. Just send me an email. I'm on LinkedIn under Brent W. Peterson. Like I said, I have a newsletter on LinkedIn. It comes out every Wednesday, and I have content that I put out about e-commerce and AI every day, including the weekends. I usually do a pre-long run post on Saturday morning. So if you're interested in how far I'm going to run on Saturday, you can see that. And then I always like to sprinkle in some entrepreneurial content. I do have a podcast for entrepreneurs for EO Network. And then I have my Talk Commerce podcast, which I've been doing for 4 years now, 350 or whatever odd episodes of that. So I do a weekly interview on that as well. And I would encourage people to check those out.
Nice. Well, Brent, I really appreciate the time, man. I thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been another episode of Entrepreneur Intel. Thank you for joining us. For show notes or other episodes, please visit us at entrepreneurintel.com. Until next time.